Hello there, everyone. I am a robot. Just kidding, but that's relevant for today's video. It's now time to do a summary for the third story in the second Tales from the Pizzaplex book, Haps, and this story is called B-7. I've already done summaries on the first and second stories in the book, Help Wanted and Haps, so go check those out if you haven't already. I actually said in my Haps summary that was the longest story in the book, but B-7 is actually one single page shorter. I will also be doing a summary on the epilogue, and that summary will hopefully be out tomorrow, but that's not guaranteed. But I think it's time that we get started on B-7, so hope you guys enjoy. So the main character of B-7 is Billy, who is only a 5-year-old kid, but it had been old enough to know that the world could be scary. When he was 3, he had to be away from his family because he was sick and had a bunch of needles in his back and stuff. That had been terrifying to him, and he never wanted to experience it again. The story begins in a very interesting way. Billy is excited that it is apparently almost time, and he exclaims that with a cookie in his mouth, accidentally spewing crumbs out of his mouth. His dad started reading the newspaper, and his mom told his dad that maybe if he set a better example, Billy might not talk with his mouth full. And Billy didn't understand what she meant by setting a better example, but he didn't really care. Right now, all he cared about was that Freddy and Friends was about to come on. Billy and his father had looked the same, but they didn't really act the same at all. When Freddy and Friends came on, his dad had said that they would be switching to the game in 15 minutes, to which his mom replied saying to let him watch Freddy and Friends. In the cartoon, Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica questioned who was watching them from the camera in the corner while eating pizza. Chica suggested that they try to go find out who it is, and Bonnie says not until after they play a song. Billy loved all the animatronics, but his favorite was Freddy, because he was brown like Billy's hair, and because he was the leader. Billy really liked the idea of being a leader. He liked the idea of being a robot, an animatronic, because they were strong and they didn't feel bad things. And Billy would like being unable to feel bad things. Then a commercial comes on for the Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, showing one of the animatronics performing. Billy grabs the TV remote and starts pretending it was a microphone and begins singing and dancing around the living room, pretending to be the animatronic in the commercial. His mom clapped for him and his dad watched. Billy tells his parents that he is an animatronic, and they play along, saying, "Okay, you're an animatronic, cool." He stopped around as if he were a big, heavy metal robot and kept singing, pretending a coat rack was a mic stand. Even when Freddy and Friends came back on, he stomped over and sat down as if he was an animatronic, as if he was heavy like an animatronic. He liked the way pretending to be an animatronic felt. It made him feel powerful and like nothing can hurt him. The next morning, Billy stomped down the stairs, still pretending to be an animatronic. His dad was confused and saw it as a bit stupid, but he still played along. Mostly because, Billy's mom told him to, silently. So Billy's dad decides to play along, and when he drank his coffee, he said that he thinks the coffee fried his circuits. And Billy tells him that he needs to go to parts and service. His dad agrees and whispers to his mom saying that he'll take his coffee to work. He also whispers asking how long Billy would be an animatronic for, and his mom says he'll get bored of it eventually. Billy didn't know why they were whispering because he could hear everything. Animatronics could hear very well, and they didn't easily get bored. After breakfast, Billy's mom took him to kindergarten and he got 2 of his friends to be robots too, but his friend Sadie didn't like Billy being a robot and called him dumb. Billy responded by pushing her, and she told the teacher, Mrs. Foswick, who put him in a timeout. But Billy knew he couldn't really be timed out unless he was turned off. He sat in the corner and just sang, and the teacher didn't like that, but he wouldn't stop singing unless he was turned off. When his mom picked him up from school, Billy's visual sensors gathered data about his surroundings, telling him it was raining, and he was glad he was in the car because rain wasn't good for animatronics. So, it's really interesting. Billy is just a regular kid, but he wants to be a robot really badly to the point where he pretends to be one, actually convincing himself that he is one. It seems like maybe Billy has some sort of mental illness or something, but because the story is told from his perspective, it's told from the perspective of what Billy imagined a robot's perspective was, because he believed that he was one. Billy was hungry, so his mom asked him what singing robots eat for lunch, and Billy said pizza, so they took a turn and went on their way to Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. Later on for dinner, Billy and his parents had salad, and Billy said robots didn't eat salad, and his dad said that it depended on the settings, so he flipped a switch behind Billy's ear and said he was now a robot who ate salad. Billy checked his internal systems to see if he really was now a robot who ate salad, and apparently he was, so he ate it, but he didn't like it. The next day, Mrs. Foswick was much nicer to him, leading him to the back of the classroom, which she said was a special place just for animatronics. There was a cardboard sign on the desk with the drawing of a robot connected to a chair by a cord with text under the drawing. She asked Billy if he recognized the first letter, and he did. It was an A. Mrs. Foswick said Billy was a very smart robot. Billy's friends Clark and Peter, who yesterday had pretended to be robots with him, were now laughing at him, along with the rest of the class. Everyone thought he was dumb for still acting like an animatronic. Miss Harper, Mrs. Foswick's teaching assistant, helped Billy for the rest of the day, teaching him how to read the text on the sign. It said, "Animatronic Charging Station." This would be where Billy sat as long as he was an animatronic, and Billy said that he always would be one. That night, Billy rejected his mom's request to cuddle with his teddy bear Max. Robots didn't sleep with teddy bears. They also didn't sleep, but they could act like humans. But when he closed his eyes, his parents talked in his doorway. His mom said the teacher said she would play along, and that Miss Harper would help him separately from everyone else. Billy's dad said that this has been going on for too long, and Mom replied saying that it's only been a few days and that he'll get tired of it soon enough. Billy heard this, but didn't know what he would get tired of. He didn't really understand. And when he slept that night, Billy the animatronic downloaded information and data about being a little boy, updating his software to be a robot that pretended to be a human. People liked this new version of Billy because he acted a bit more like he used to. His old friends still made fun of him for being a robot though, and it went on for a long time, but he didn't really keep track of time. But eventually, his mom stopped taking him to school. When he asked why, she explained that it was because school had been out for the summer. When he heard this, Billy ran it through his circuits, discovering he needed another update. Billy asked what a Billy animatronic would do over the summer, and his mom said fun stuff. And Billy asked her to input a list so he can function properly. Then we cut to a scene with Dan and Vera, aka Billy's parents, before going to bed and discussing what's been going on with Billy. They mentioned that Billy had been seeing a child psychologist for the past 4 months named Dr. Lingstrom, and that it's been 6 months since he started acting like an animatronic. Dan said that if he'd known Freddy and Friends would make him like this, then he wouldn't have let him watch it. They both agreed that they wished Billy would go back to normal. Over the summer, Billy's programming, his fun programming specifically, worked effectively, except when visiting Dr. Lingstrom, who asked him questions about whether or not he remembers being a normal kid and why he thinks he's an animatronic. He always told her that he had always been an animatronic programmed to be a human. But eventually, he had to update again, as he was now starting first grade at a new school, a private school. On the first day, the teacher, Mrs. Cromwell, individually asked everybody in the class to stand up and say their names and something they'd like to do. When it got to Billy, he said that he was an animatronic named Billy who liked doing whatever he was programmed to do. Everyone laughed at him, and the teacher told everyone to stop laughing and be nice. Billy also had a beginner's robotics class where he learned that robots required a special oil in order to lubricate its joints. So, when Billy got home, he spent time locating that specific oil in the garage. And guys, Billy literally drinks the oil. Yeah, days pass, and he drinks more and more oil and eats less and less. But one day, he wakes up and his stomach is in a lot of pain. Surprise, surprise, I wonder what did that. Yeah, you're not supposed to drink oil. It took him a lot of effort to make it downstairs, and when he did after eating his breakfast, he threw up. That day, his mom took him to the hospital, understandably, but Billy believed it to be parts in service. They did what he considered to be a system-wide check, and they found that he was temporarily out of service, aka sick. He went home pretty soon though, and when he did, he went back to his supposed self-oiling routine because he believed it to be a good routine. But then he had to go back to parts and service the next day. The animatronic repair person, apparently, Dr. Reynolds, had told him that he wasn't supposed to be drinking oil when he figured out that was the problem. Billy explained to Dr. Reynolds that he was a robot and needed to lubricate his joints. Dr. Reynolds discussed with Billy's mom regarding this, and his mom told the doctor that Dr. Lingstrom, a child psychologist, had told them to play along or else he could have a psychotic break. Billy could hear all this but didn't quite understand what it meant. So Dr. Reynolds played along and told Billy that the best kind of oil for his joints was olive oil, which his mom would put in his food and would help him much better than the motor oil did. Billy understood and said he would comply. So then we get some additional information on how Billy detects when a year has gone by, since he didn't really keep track of time. But he was able to tell when a year had gone by based on certain days passing, like Christmas and stuff. And it goes on for a long, long time. One day, Billy is on his way to the bathroom when he hears a word he is unfamiliar with. Institution. He hears his mom and dad arguing, his dad suggesting that they put Billy in an institution, and his mom refusing. Because of what happened when he was younger, how he had to be separated from them because, like, he had to go to the hospital, have the needles in his back and stuff like that, she never wanted to, have to be separated from him again. So she refused to put him in an institution. Dan was frustrated because at this point, Vera had been going along with the animatronic Billy idea for 4 years. Yeah, the story started with Billy being 5, now he's 9 apparently. Dan at this point has had enough. He believed that he and Vera had a freak for a son, and they also had no lives apparently. Dan couldn't take it anymore, and when I say that, I mean it. He straight up leaves, and never to be seen again for the rest of the story. 2 days after the argument he'd overheard, Billy asked his mom why his dad left, as she was making spaghetti sauce, which Billy thought looked like human blood. His mom explained that his dad didn't understand that you can't change who you are, and Billy concurred. As she went back to making the sauce, she asked Billy if he had ever heard of a growing animatronic, and he said that he didn't, but it didn't bother him because there were no other animatronics like him. He was unique. Billy's mom agreed. Then we, just completely casually skip ahead 3 years later, and Billy is soon starting 7th grade. But he had figured out a way to gain knowledge without the help of school. So because of that, the morning of what would have been his first day of 7th grade, he sat up from his steel table that had last year replaced his bed, bro, what the fuck, and told his mom that he wouldn't be going to school today. His mom looked unexpectedly happy about this, asking if he was sick. Billy didn't understand why the thought of him being sick brought his mom such joy. Then we get the first and only case of Billy being a complete giga-chad. Quote, "I will not go to school because the disadvantages of school far outweigh the advantages." What a legend, guys. But then he immediately says that he will read books to acquire new knowledge and that he literally doesn't need his mom except to drive him to the library. Pretty cold, man. He and his mom looked at each other for a while, and he noticed that she looked different. She was slimmer now, her hair was her hair was less bouncy, and her skin had changed from being pinkish to grayish. The color of her eyes had also become more of a faded blue over time. So Billy stopped going to school. He read books very often, and his birthday was called his creation day because he saw it as the day he was created. When his dad had still lived with them, he saw it as stupid, but his mom went along with Billy. He and his mom often debated what day to classify as his creation day. His mom thought it should be the day he was actually born, but Billy thought it should be the day he watched Freddy and Friends and supposedly became complete. So, to his perspective, it was now his 13th creation day, but to his mom, it was his 18th. Yeah, Billy was now 18 years old, and it's been 13 years since the beginning of the story. His celebration was spent with only his mom and Dr. Lindstrom. Billy had also decided 5 years into his robot life that he only wanted to eat white foods. That's what I call racism. Okay, sorry, what were we saying? Oh, right. He also only liked wearing white and silver-colored clothes. He got some gifts for his creation day, including clothes of that design, as well as a laptop, which his mom had said would work well together with his own interface. As Billy was going downstairs, he heard Dr. Lindstrom talking to Vera, saying that he's 18 and by now he has to go to a group home. Vera has sacrificed so much, including her social life and her health for this boy, but she didn't care. She told Dr. Lindstrom that Billy is his son. I said his son, I meant her son, my bad, okay. When she said this, Billy always felt a boost of energy because it told him that he was doing what he was meant to be doing. This kind of just shows that Billy, it shows what Billy has been saying throughout the whole story. He has no feelings whatsoever. Billy basically follows the exact description of a psychopath, a person with no emotions. He doesn't care about the effect he has on others. All he cares about is being a good animatronic, doing exactly what he was programmed to do, and doing it well. He doesn't care about the impact it has on his mom, he just cares that he is a son to his mom, and he doesn't care what it's doing to her. One day, Billy came upstairs from his recharge station, which he moved to the basement like 5 years ago, to find no one. Every day he heard his mom in the kitchen, but he couldn't today. He went into the kitchen to see if she was there, but she wasn't. At this point, when that happened, I knew exactly what was going on. He searched through the entirety of the house until he made it to the bathroom. Because it was the last place he didn't check, he assumed she was in there. The door was closed, and he knew he shouldn't just walk in if your mother is in the bathroom, so he knocked on the door and asked if she was coming down. She didn't respond. It was raining out, so it was very noisy, but from what he could tell, the bathroom was silent. Sensing something was wrong, he went inside. Inside the bathroom, Billy found his mother in the bathtub. Under the water in the bathtub. Obviously, she was naked, and Billy had never seen that before. Why am I calling this out? Because this means that Billy has never seen tits before. So, let me get this straight. Billy is fatherless, now motherless, and bitchless. So, kind of like what I just said. So, Billy was able to figure out that his mom was dead. He didn't know why, but he knew that humans always wanted to know why a person was dead. He noticed an empty glass on the counter and the medicine cabinet was open. He supposedly put this information in the appropriate file and then goes and calls the police because he knows that's what you're supposed to do in this situation. Billy's mom had always upgraded his programming when brushing his hair. Not long before she died, she told him not to tell people he was a robot anymore, and although he didn't quite understand why, he complied, and he didn't tell the police he was a robot when they got there, but some of them already knew because it was kind of a small town. After all that was over, Billy went downstairs and opened his computer up to a file that his mom had sent him and told him to read in the case of her death. Now she was dead, so he read the file, because I mean that's what she told him to do. The file told Billy that he could no longer be an animatronic son, but had to now be an animatronic adult. It left instructions for how to do adult things like pay bills, cook food, shop online, stuff like that. He spent the next year trying to master his new programming, but he was starting to develop cognitive dissonance, basically meaning he had two different parts of himself that contradicted each other. Billy concluded that this was due to his body being that of a human despite him supposedly knowing that he's a robot. His solution to this is to literally remove his arms and legs and replace them with prosthetic ones. So, he called the surgeon's office and explained that he wanted a surgeon to remove his arms and legs and replace them with prosthetic ones. The lady on the end of the line gasped and asked why, and he explained that his normal arms and legs didn't match his identity, but he didn't explain that his identity was a robot. The lady hung up. I understand why. And after 40 minutes of basically identical calls, Billy decided to lie down on his recharging station to reboot. In human talk, he lies on his bed and sleeps. Billy later found out that a licensed doctor wouldn't be allowed to do a surgery like this, so Billy searched from an unlicensed one and found a doctor, just referred to as Doc, who had lost his license due to malpractice lawsuits related to unspecified substance abuse and health issues. Doc was willing to do any surgery requested so long as it paid well. For some reason I pictured Doc Brown while I was reading this. So when Billy told Doc his plan, Doc told him that it wouldn't be happening overnight and that he would need time for the stumps to heal and physical therapy once he got the prosthetics. Billy told him that he wouldn't need either of those things as he apparently adapts easily, an excuse to get out of saying that he's a robot since that would go against his programming. Still, Doc said that his quote-unquote squeeze, named Norma, was a retired nurse who was qualified for recovery and physical therapy. Doc gave Billy the address, and Billy said he would be there the next day. Doc lived in the basement of a 7-story abandoned mental hospital, which Doc laughed about when he explained, but Billy didn't know why this was so funny. Doc owned the building because no one else wanted it. The next day, Billy's first surgery caused him to feel a quote-unquote pain-like awareness, which is basically him in denial about pain because he thinks he's a robot and they don't feel pain. So 4 weeks go by, and Billy gets his first prosthetic leg. His research told him it would make him stronger and faster, but it seemed to do the opposite. It looked satisfactory for his end goal, but it didn't really feel that way. He concluded that it would probably feel more satisfactory once all 4 prosthetics were in place. He spent 6 weeks total with Doc and Norma before he went home and found that his recharge area, being in the basement, didn't suit his new legs anymore, as the stairs were difficult to come by with the prosthetic leg. So, Billy hired a moving service to remove all the stuff in his parents' bedroom and put his stuff from the basement in there. So more time passes, 3 of the 4 surgeries are done, but they don't seem to be concluding with Billy's ideal outcome, but they instead seem to be making him worse. He felt weaker, and he often felt the pain that he coped about. He questioned whether Doc was the problem, but he came to the conclusion that the problem had been that he raised his standards too high and was failing to meet them. He hoped that the last surgery would help his feelings about this, but they didn't. It just made it worse. At this point, Billy had a lurching walk and was just a fumbling buffoon. He knew he had to accept his failure, and he had to find a new way to combat the inconsistency between his mentality and physical body. So Billy ended up finding an online chat room for people who weren't satisfied with their physical appearance, and he met a girl named Malaya, who was basically just Beverly from It, abused by her dad, and then got in a relationship with a dude who also abused her. His conversation with her was apparently stimulating, which is the copium language for he enjoyed it and wanted to smash, but the conversation also made him realize that he wanted the metal plates under his facial skin. Okay. But then Malaya asked if he wanted to meet in person, and he said yeah. Then we get to Malaya's perspective as she pulls up to Billy's house. She questioned whether or not she was stupid for coming here, because who knows whether this guy was like a serial killer or something. But when she met Billy at the door, she found that he was tall and cute, and she smiled at him until she looked down at his body, specifically his arms, and her smile disappeared. Billy was smiling at her, complimented her pretty purple dress, and said that he was happy she was here and that he had ordered a white cake, and explained that he only ate white food. So he also said that he used to make his own cakes, but his new limbs weren't very good for that sort of thing. Malaya noticed that Billy sounded a bit robotic, but that was okay. It's not like he could help how he sounds. And she found Billy to be really brave about his limbs, especially when she learned his legs had also been prosthetics. She was amazed that he treated her with more respect than any of the guys that she had dated in the past. She actually liked him. She stayed for 2 hours, and when she left, she intended to come back. And she did. On the third visit, she asked Billy what they were, and Billy didn't understand the question at first until she clarified the question was she just a friend or was she his girlfriend? Billy said that she was his girlfriend because she was a girl and she was his friend, this bozo. But he did like having her around. When he said that she was his girlfriend, she actually kissed him, and Billy enjoyed it. Well, at least someone's getting some. But later on, Billy called Doc and asked him to install plates over his cheekbones and under his skin, and Doc said he could do that. Billy called Malaya and told her he would be gone for a few days and would call her when he got back. The faceplates ended up adding to the pain and were, according to Billy, 50% effective and 50% non-effective. They made his face look more animatronic-like, but he looked a bit more like a monster. When Malaya saw what he looked like, she was upset. She thought he was cute before, but not anymore. Billy decided the metal plates weren't enough. He asked Doc to turn the whites of his eyes black. Oh my god. And he did. Malaya wasn't as happy with these eyes as with his old ones, but she thought it looked kinda cool. But it still wasn't enough for Billy. He decided to get rid of his tongue and put a voice synthesizer in his throat. And Malaya freaked out when his tongue was removed. She went to his house to see, and when she saw, she ran away. She apologized the next day, and Billy said it's not her fault, she doesn't understand. Next, Billy removed his ears. Billy removed his ears. When Malaya saw it, she said it wouldn't look all that bad once the hair around it grows back, but then Billy said that he wanted her to shave his head once the incisions heal. He also explained that he had other unnecessary parts that needed to be removed. On that note, Malaya left, and Billy didn't see her again. One day, Billy decided to change his name to something more in keeping with his true nature, in his words. He called Malaya, who said, "Hi, Billy," to which she responded saying that from now on, he wanted to be called B-7. After that, Malaya hung up, just instantly, and B-7 didn't call her again until his last exterior changes were done. He called asking if she wanted to celebrate his 16th creation day with him, but she rejected. On the morning of his 16th creation day, though, B-7 looked at himself in the mirror to see the product of all the work he had done. But when he did, there was a sudden download of information. Out of nowhere, he remembered who he was. He was not B-7, he was Billy. All his memories from before he became an animatronic flooded his mind, and he collapsed to the floor, crying his eyes out. Eventually, he had no more tears to produce, and went to what had been his recharge station, or what had originally been his parents' bedroom. He sat in his chair and called Doc, asking if it was possible for him to undo all that he had done. But of course, it wasn't. Billy sat in that chair for most of the day until he finally got up and went outside. He hadn't driven since he got the prosthetic legs and arms, and they didn't really allow him to drive safely, so Billy walked down the sidewalk. He wanted to get away from the nightmare he turned his life into, so he walked away from his house and to the junkyard he always passed when he was going to and from Doc's mental hospital. Billy went into the junkyard and found a rusty old car inside a car compactor. The car was similar to the one he had in his garage. He pulled open the door of this car and got inside, and for the first time in 16 years, Billy, as a human, went to sleep. But then he woke up to the sound of rumbling. This car had been rumbling as if in an earthquake. Billy looked through the back window of the car and saw a man at some sort of control panel. I immediately knew what was going on. Billy tucked himself against the back seat of the car because he didn't think anyone would see him there. He closed his eyes and waited. He heard the metal of the station wagon he was in begin to crunch down. He opened his eyes and saw that the roof of the car was being compressed down toward him. He saw this, but he didn't have a problem with it. Billy wanted to die. The car compactor crushed the car with Billy inside, crushing Billy with excruciating pain, but he was okay with it. Blood spurted out of his mouth, and he was okay with that. He screamed because he was obviously in pain with his skull being crushed, but seeing his blood reminded him of who he was, a human. That thought comforted him as he let go of his life, and that is where the story ends. 3 words are necessary to describe this story in full. Oh my god! This was the second most insane story I've ever read. First obviously goes to Under Construction because what the hell was that? But this story was almost as insane. I have a few theory ideas about the story, but I'm just going to mention 2 of them briefly as I'm saving the last for an actual theory video. My first idea is that this is the opposite of Gregbot. When the description for this book came out, everyone started freaking out about how it was supposedly about a robot child which could support the idea of Gregory being a robot. But in fact, it was actually the opposite. Billy isn't a robot, but he thinks he's a robot. But if Gregory were to be a robot, it seems like he doesn't know it. Billy thinks he's a robot, but is a human, and Gregory thinks he's a human, but is a robot. Kinda sus. It's just an idea, though, honestly, and while I do believe Gregory is a robot, I don't think this story really has anything to do with him. But I do think it has something to do with William. Think about Billy. The name Billy is short for William. Billy wants to be a robot because it would make him feel powerful and invincible, and he eventually convinces himself that he actually is a robot. It gets to the point where he basically has someone who makes edits to him to make him more like a robot and remove more and more of his flesh, plus his vocal cords. Billy also dies by being crushed to death. Now think about William. William's goal throughout the series is basically to become immortal, so he tries to experiment with Remnant, but in doing so he is crushed to death in a springlock suit, like how Billy was crushed to death, although obviously in a different way. William in the Silver Eyes tells us that a springlock failure severs your vocal cords, and Billy gets rid of his. Because he fails in his Remnant plan, William now possesses an animatronic. That becomes his new goal, to be immortal through keeping his consciousness within animatronics. He wants to be an animatronic and basically becomes one himself. Even in the Silver Eyes, he says, "I am one of them," while referring to the animatronics. As Burntrap, William had Vanny, who makes edits to his body, turning him into a hybrid of a human and an animatronic. Still with his remaining flesh, but his body is mostly replaced by metal parts, just like Billy. Doc to Billy is how Vanny is to William. William, as both Springtrap and Burntrap, also has a lurching walk, which Billy is described as having when he gets all his limbs replaced by prosthetics. Billy and William have a lot of similarities, and I think it's intentional. What exactly it's trying to tell us, I don't know, but it is an interesting thought to think about. But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, then please leave a like and subscribe if you want to. Stay tuned for my next video, which will be a summary for the second epilogue of Tales from the Pizzaplex, and after that, I'll do a video ranking all the stories in this book. After that, I'm going to be doing theories on this book. At this point, I have 3 planned, but the epilogue might give me ideas for more. I don't know yet because I haven't read it, but I have some cool stuff planned, so stay tuned. But until then, see ya!